The stars shimmered beyond the glass canopy of Kelleran Station, a massive orbital hub built by the Confederation to oversee the conquered worlds of the Orion Spur. From this vantage point, the galaxy looked peaceful, orderly, controlled, but deep within the council chambers of the station, that illusion was already beginning to crack. Ambassador Tavan Rel, a scaled and rigid-featured bureaucrat of the Confederation, paced irritably. His golden crest twitched in agitation as he spoke to the assembly. 3 cycles, 3 entire cycles wasted on this planet. Every envoy we send returns empty-handed, humiliated, or disgraced. And why? Because of the humans. A low ripple of murmurs echoed across the chamber. The Confederation prided itself on subjugating entire species without firing a single shot. They promised trade, unity, security, and culture. Most worlds bowed quickly under the weight of such promises, or threats disguised as them. But Earth was different. No matter the envoy, no matter the treaty, the humans always resisted. Sometimes politely, sometimes with laughter, sometimes with outright defiance. It was maddening. And today, the High Council demanded results. Far below the orbiting station, the blue-green orb of Earth rotated calmly, unaware that the future of its people was being debated among aliens who saw them as little more than troublesome primitives. Except not everyone in the chamber shared that view. At the edge of the assembly stood Kale Vera, a young officer of the Confederation's diplomatic service. His people, the Tural, were once independent too, until the Confederation absorbed them a century ago. He had grown up on stories of resistance, of those who had tried to fight back. Most of them ended in tragedy, yet when he looked at the humans, he saw echoes of his ancestors. Unpredictable, resilient, dangerous in ways the Confederation could not measure. And now, he had been assigned to serve as aide to the next envoy. That envoy was not an alien at all. She was a human. The outcast. Captain Mara Ellison had never wanted this job. She hadn't asked to be Earth's representative. She was an ex-soldier, dishonorably discharged after the Mars Garrison uprising, where her refusal to follow an unlawful order had nearly cost Earth's fragile alliance with its colonies. For years she had drifted, mercenary work, engineering jobs, hauling freight between colonies just to eat. Her reputation followed her, a woman who defied orders, who put principle above protocol, admirable to some, reckless to others. And yet, when the Confederation demanded new negotiations, Earth's fractured governments had chosen her. Not because they trusted her, but because she was expendable. If she failed, and everyone assumed she would, at least it wouldn't be the politicians taking the blame. Now, standing on the landing platform of Kelleran Station, Mara tightened her jacket and glared at the alien delegation waiting to receive her. "Another day, another circus," she muttered. Her boots rang against the metallic deck as she walked forward, chin high. The first clash. The reception chamber was cold and cavernous, designed to make visitors feel small. Confederation banners glowed along the walls, etched with the insignia of thousands of worlds under its control. Ambassador Tavan greeted her with a thin-lipped sneer. "Captain Ellison," he said, voice like sand grinding against metal. "The Confederation welcomes you, though it would be more accurate to say we tolerate you. Shall we proceed?" Mara smiled tightly. "Straight to the threats already, you're efficient." The aliens bristled. To mock a Confederation ambassador here, in the very heart of their authority, was unthinkable. Kale Vera, standing silently behind Tavan, couldn't help but stare at the human. There was something about the way she refused to shrink, refused to bow, that made the air in the room shift. The talks began poorly and spiraled downward. Every clause of the treaty dripped with veiled control. Economic quotas, voluntary research access, cultural oversight. Mara tore through the wording like a blade. "You want Earth's genetic data. You want our colonies restricted. You want our resources under your quotas. Let's drop the pretense. You don't want an ally, you want a leash." The council chamber erupted. Tavan's crest flared, his eyes blazing. "Careful, human," he hissed. "The Confederation has crushed worlds for less insolence." Mara leaned forward, meeting his glare with steel. "Then maybe you've never met a world like mine." The rift opens. By the end of the session, no progress had been made. The aliens seethed. The human delegation, such as it was, stood firm. But something had changed. Kale noticed it first. The usual smug confidence of the Confederation ambassadors wasn't there. For the first time in living memory, a species had not just rejected their terms, they had dissected them, exposed them, and laughed in their faces. The High Council would not tolerate this humiliation. Punishment was inevitable. That night, Kale found himself outside Mara's temporary quarters, against his better judgment. When she opened the door, suspicion flashed in her sharp gray eyes. "Lost alien?" she asked, voice flat. "No," Kale said softly. "I came to warn you. The Confederation does not forgive insults. You have embarrassed them, and they will answer with force. Leave while you can." Mara studied him for a long moment, then shook her head. "I don't run," she said simply. "You don't understand," Kale pressed. "You think this is about you, but it's not. If they cannot control Earth, they will destroy it. That's how the Confederation survives." Mara's jaw tightened. For the first time, Kale saw the soldier beneath her calm mask. "Then we'll survive another way." The first crack. The warning came sooner than either expected. In the depths of Kelleran Station, a message pulsed through secure channels, meant only for high-ranking officials. Kale intercepted it by accident, his clearance granting him partial access. It was in order. The 7th Fleet, 3 dreadnoughts and dozens of cruisers, was being dispatched to the Sol system, officially to assist the negotiations. In truth, it was an invasion. Kale's hands shook as he read it. He had seen what the 7th Fleet did to non-compliant worlds. They didn't conquer, they erased. And now they were coming for Earth. Cliffhanger. Mara was in the middle of packing when Kale stormed into her quarters, face pale beneath his lilac skin. "They're coming," he said. "Who?" she demanded. "The 7th Fleet, 3 dreadnoughts. Earth has less than 10 cycles before they arrive." Mara froze, the air leaving her lungs. For all her bravado, she knew what that meant. Earth's orbital defenses were primitive compared to Confederation firepower. An invasion would mean annihilation. She looked Kale dead in the eyes. "Then we stop them before they get there." The chamber lights flickered as Mara Ellison digested Kale's words. The 7th Fleet. 3 dreadnoughts, 27 battle cruisers, thousands of soldiers. It wasn't a warning, it was a death sentence. Mara closed her eyes, forcing the panic back. Fear never helped. Fear got people killed. She learned that on Mars. 10 cycles, you said?" she asked quietly. Kale nodded, his violet crest trembling with agitation. "At most. Their engines are already burning at full. By the time the news even reaches Earth officially, the fleet will be halfway there." Mara exhaled slowly. "Then we don't have 10 cycles, we have 5. The conflicted ally." Kale paced the narrow quarters, every gesture betraying his unease. "You don't understand. No one survives a Confederation fleet. They don't negotiate once the ships arrive. They enforce. Your world will burn." "Then we don't let them arrive," Mara shot back. Kale froze. "What are you suggesting? Sabotage? Treason?" "I'm suggesting survival," Mara snapped. "You came to me with this warning, which means somewhere deep down you know what the Confederation is doing isn't right." Kale's 3-fingered hands tightened into fists. His people, the Turol, had once stood proudly independent. But when the Confederation came, they hadn't fought, not really. They signed the treaty, accepted the honor of membership, and lost themselves piece by piece. Their language was now a dialect. Their customs regulated as heritage artifacts. Their warriors reduced to ceremonial guards. And yet here was this human, staring at him as if he could still choose. "You can walk away," Mara said softly. "Pretend you never told me. Go back to your life, your orders, your chains, or—" she leaned closer, her voice like iron. "You can help me stop them." Kale's throat worked. He thought of his family, his career, everything he'd lose. But he also thought of the humans, laughing at the Confederation's pompous rituals, refusing to bow, tearing holes in their polished lies. Maybe there was still a choice. Earth awakens. Back on Earth, the message spread faster than the Confederation had predicted. News of the 7th Fleet's movement leaked. Mara suspected Kale had quietly helped that along. And within hours, Earth's fractured governments convened in a state of emergency. For once, they were united. Fear did that. In a secure chamber beneath Geneva, Mara stood before the representatives of the United Earth government. Rows of faces, African, Asian, European, Martian-born, stared at her with disbelief. You expect us to fight the Confederation, one counselor barked. They control 3,000 worlds, we have 11 colonies. They'll crush us before we even fire a shot, another muttered. Mara let them finish. Then she stepped forward, her boots echoing on the stone floor. You're right, she said evenly. We can't beat them head-on, but we don't have to. The chamber stilled. What are you suggesting? Mara's eyes swept the room. The Confederation thrives on fear. They win because everyone thinks resistance is impossible. They use fleets to intimidate, treaties to strangle, propaganda to pacify. But the truth? They're stretched thin. They rely on compliance, not war. If we make this costly enough, if we show even one world that the Confederation can bleed, then we don't just save Earth. We shatter their grip. The counselors shifted uncomfortably. Some were afraid, others intrigued. You talk of bleeding the Confederation, a Martian governor said slowly. But with what? Our fleets are outdated, our colonies divided, we don't even have a unified chain of command. Mara allowed herself a small smile. Then we unify, starting now. Old wounds, new fire. The following days were chaos. Earth's nations bickered, colonies demanded autonomy, generals questioned Mara's authority. But when the Seventh Fleet's projected arrival grew closer, the arguments gave way to desperation. Orbital platforms long mothballed were reactivated. Lunar shipyards ramped production, converting cargo freighters into makeshift gunships. Martian militias pledged troops. Even the outer colonies, often resentful of Earth, began shipping supplies and volunteers. It wasn't enough. Everyone knew it wasn't enough. But it was something. And through it all, Mara worked like a woman possessed. She oversaw defenses, negotiated between factions, and leaned on Kale's quiet knowledge of Confederation tactics. Late one night, standing on the balcony of Geneva's diplomatic compound, Mara stared up at the stars. Kale joined her, his eyes reflecting the faint glow of orbiting satellites. You're changing them, he said softly. They're changing themselves, Mara corrected. I'm just giving them a reason. You'll die for this. Mara smirked faintly. Maybe, but better fighting than kneeling. The enemy moves. On the Confederation capital, world of Galore, the High Council convened in fury. Ambassador Tavan delivered his report, his crest quivering with rage. The humans refuse. Again, they dissect our treaties, mock our traditions, and now, he slammed his claw against the floor. Now they rally their fractured world against us. They must be made an example. High Counselor Vexman's voice rumbled through the hall. The Seventh Fleet is already en route. Earth will be crushed, and their ashes will remind the galaxy what defiance costs. But not everyone agreed. Some counselors shifted uneasily. Whispers spread. If humans resisted successfully, if they survived even one battle, it could embolden other worlds. The Confederation's power wasn't infinite. It was perception, image, fear, and fear cut both ways. Still, the order stood. The fleet would proceed. The first spark. Mara's preparations were almost complete when the first unexpected development arrived. Kale burst into her command chamber, eyes wide. The Confederation isn't coming alone, he said. What do you mean? They've convinced 3-member worlds to send auxiliary ships. Volunteers, they call them, but they're not just soldiers, they're slaves. Press-ganged fighters meant to swell the ranks. Mara's stomach dropped. That meant more ships, more firepower, more bodies to throw at Earth's defenses. But Kale wasn't finished. One of those worlds is Tural. Mara stared at him. Your people. He nodded, jaw tight. They'll be forced to fight, and if they die, the Confederation will call it loyalty. I can't let that happen. Mara stepped closer. Then we make sure they don't. Cliffhanger. That night, Kale made a choice that sealed his fate. He accessed a restricted Confederation channel, one he had sworn never to touch without authorization, and sent a coded message, not to the Confederation, but to a Tural commander he trusted. A message of rebellion. When he returned to Mara's side, his face was pale. They'll know it was me, he whispered. Mara placed a hand on his shoulder. Then let's make sure it's worth it. At that exact moment, alarms blared through Earth Command. A transmission had been detected. Not from Earth, not from the Seventh Fleet, but from a fleet of unknown origin, decloaking at the edge of the solar system. The defense officers scrambled. Screens filled with readings that made no sense. Ships unlike any seen before, jagged, angular, bearing energy signatures not in Confederation databases. Myra's blood ran cold. What the hell is that? Cale stared at the readings, his eyes wide with disbelief. Not Confederation, he whispered, not human either. The unknown fleet began broadcasting a message. The command center on Earth plunged into chaos. Screens flickered with incomprehensible readings. Technicians shouted across the room, trying to make sense of what their instruments were telling them. Mara stood in the center, fists clenched, her heart hammering. She had prepared for the Confederation. She had prepared for the 7th Fleet, but not this. The unknown fleet hung at the very edge of the solar system like silent predators. Jagged silhouettes, their hulls carved with strange, glowing patterns. Their ships didn't match any known configuration. Not human, not Confederation, not even among the free colonies' scattered records. The broadcast came as a sharp burst of sound, then reshaped itself into words, translated through Earth's universal relay systems. This is the Cathari Assembly. We seek the human called Mara Ellison. Every eye in the chamber turned toward her. The Cathari. Cale went rigid. His violet skin paled, his crest flattened tight against his head. The Cathari, he whispered. That's impossible. They were destroyed centuries ago. Myra raised an eyebrow. Destroyed. Cale nodded slowly, his voice heavy. The Confederation crushed them. They resisted assimilation, so their fleets were burned, their colonies scattered. Every record lists them as extinct. Mara stared back at the display. Extinct or not, they were here. Put them through, she ordered. The main screen shimmered, resolving into the image of an alien unlike any Mara had ever seen. Its body was tall, thin, plated with crystalline armor that seemed to shift color with every movement. 4 eyes glowed like molten glass, and when it spoke, its voice carried both a resonance and a softness, like stone grinding underwater. I am Aelthir of the Cathari Assembly. We have watched your Defiance. We know what comes. Mara's throat tightened. The 7th Fleet. Yes, the Confederation believes fear keeps them strong, but fear breeds rebellion. We are proof. We survived in the shadows, waiting. Now we offer Earth a choice, stand alone and be crushed, or join us. The chamber erupted with whispers. Another fleet, another war, another risk. Mara lifted a hand, silencing the room. Why us? Why Earth? Aelthir tilted its crystalline head. Because you refused, because you said no when others broke, and because the Confederation fears you already. That makes you dangerous and useful. Divisions on Earth. Not everyone was convinced. The United Earth government split instantly. Some leaders clamored to accept the Cathari offer, to join this hidden alliance and gain allies against the Confederation. Others screamed that it was a trap. They've been hiding for centuries, one counselor argued. If they had the strength to fight, why wait until now? Why reveal themselves only when Earth is threatened? Mara listened, but her instincts told her something else. The Cathari didn't seem like conquerors. They seemed like survivors, like Earth. Still, she couldn't commit without proof. She turned to Cale. What do you know about them? Anything that isn't in your censored Confederation records. Cale hesitated. Only whispers. My grandfather used to say the Cathari weren't destroyed, only scattered, that they hid their fleets in dark systems, waiting for a day when the Confederation grew weak. But if they are truly here, he looked at Mara, then the galaxy is already changing. The test. The Cathari didn't offer blind trust. They demanded proof of Earth's resolve. Aelthir's voice rang through the chamber once more. The 7th Fleet will arrive in less than 8 cycles. We cannot reveal ourselves openly until we are certain Earth will fight. If you stand firm, we will join you. If you falter, we will vanish again. Mara bristled. So you're testing us? No, the Confederation is testing you. We are only watching. The feed cut. The room erupted again. Mara slammed her fist against the table. Enough! The Confederation is coming whether we like it or not. If we fight alone, we die. If we hesitate, we die. So we fight with everything we have. And if the Cathari join us, then maybe, just maybe, we win. Silence followed. For the first time, the counselors didn't argue. The saboteur. But even as Earth prepared, betrayal was brewing. Cale noticed it first. Inconsistencies in communication logs, security feeds that didn't match, supplies disappearing from orbital stockpiles. Someone was leaking Earth's plans. Someone was feeding the Confederation information. He brought it to Myra. "You're sure?" she asked. Kale nodded grimly. "Positive. There's a Confederation asset inside your command structure." Myra's jaw tightened. "Then we flush them out." They set a trap, a false deployment order routed through secure channels. Within hours, the Confederation relays lit up with the information. The traitor was revealed. A man Mara once trusted, a senior officer from the Martian colonies, Colonel Desmond Hale. When confronted, his voice shook with rage. "You don't understand," he spat. "Earth can't win. We sign the treaty, we live. We resist, we burn. The Confederation can't be fought." Mara's voice was ice. "Then you should have told them to come for me, not all of us." Hale sneered. "They don't care about you. They care about control, and they'll take it whether you bleed for it or not." She stared at him, feeling both anger and pity. A man broken by fear, choosing survival over freedom. But freedom wasn't negotiable. She ordered him confined. Shadows of war. With Hale exposed, Earth's preparations accelerated. Orbital platforms armed, colonies fortified, defense fleets drilled relentlessly. Every human, soldier, mechanic, medic, farmer played a role. And still it didn't feel like enough. On the 8th night, Myra stood alone on the Geneva balcony again, staring at the stars. Kale joined her, silent at first. "You believe in them?" he said finally. Myra didn't look away from the sky. "I have to. If we fall here, the Confederation owns the galaxy forever. If we win, even once, the galaxy changes." Kale's voice was low. "You sound like a Cathari." Mara smirked faintly. "Maybe they sound like us." Cliffhanger. The alarms blared at dawn. Every satellite, every defense platform screamed the same warning. Mass signatures detected. Warp exits forming at the edge of the system. The 7th Fleet had arrived. 3 dreadnoughts, 24 cruisers, thousands of Confederation soldiers. And Earth's fragile line of defense stood waiting. Mara Ellison strode into the command chamber, her voice steady though her stomach twisted with dread. "Patch me through to the fleet," she ordered. Kale's eyes widened. "You're going to talk to them." "Not talk," Mara said. "Remind them what they're walking into." The screen flared to life. And there, filling the display, was the face of Admiral Kra Tur, commander of the 7th Fleet. His mandibles clicked in disdain as he looked down on her. "Human," he rumbled, "kneel now and I may yet leave your planet whole." Myra's lips curled into a smile. "Come and take it." The stars above Earth twisted with unnatural light as the 7th Fleet tore into real space. Massive dreadnoughts, their hulls plated in dark alloy, spread out like predators circling prey. Cruisers and destroyers fanned into formation, weapons charging, shields glowing like molten steel. On Earth's side, the defenses looked fragile in comparison. A scattering of orbital platforms, hastily armed freighters, retrofitted mining vessels, and half-drained crews staring at the black void with trembling hands. Mara Ellison stood at the center of Earth Command, her jaw clenched, her heart pounding so hard it echoed in her ears. "All units report ready," her comms officer said, voice tight. Mara nodded. "Then let's make history." The first strike. The 7th Fleet didn't hesitate. Admiral Kra Tur gave a single, clipped order. "Advance, break them." The dreadnoughts moved forward, their heavy cannons charging. A storm of plasma fire erupted, streaking across the void toward Earth's defensive line. The first orbital platform shattered instantly, torn apart in a blaze of metal and fire. Hundreds of lives snuffed out in seconds. Mara gritted her teeth. "Hold formation, return fire." The human fleet responded. Retrofitted freighters launched missiles, orbital stations fired railguns, and Martian gunships darted through the chaos. Explosions rippled across the darkness, not enough to stop the Confederation, but enough to sting. Kale watched in stunned silence. Humans fought with a ferocity unlike anything he had seen. They weren't disciplined like Confederation soldiers. They were chaotic, reckless, desperate, but somehow it worked. Their unpredictability made them dangerous. The trap. Mara's voice cut through the chaos. Phase 2 now. From the asteroid belt, hidden ships roared to life. Dozens of mining rigs, secretly armed with cannons and explosives, surged forward. They weren't warships. They weren't even fast. But they carried payloads designed to crack asteroids, and when those hit a cruiser's shields, the effect was devastating. 2 Confederation ships went down in the opening minutes, their hulls splitting as fire consumed them. Admiral Krautur's mandibles clicked in rage. "Primitive tricks," he snarled. "Press forward, no mercy." But Myra only smiled grimly. "Keep pressing, Admiral. That's exactly what I want." Earth's gambit. The plan wasn't to win outright, it was to bleed them. Earth's fleet lured the 7th Fleet deeper into the system, forcing them to stretch their lines. Orbital platforms fired, then retreated into Earth's shadow. Gunships darted in and out like hornets, striking engines and weapons before fleeing. It was working, but at a terrible cost. One by one, human ships fell. Explosions lit the void. Martian militia fighters were torn apart. Civilians, barely trained, died in droves. Cale's throat tightened as he watched a freighter detonate, its captain deliberately ramming a cruiser in a suicidal last strike. "These people," he whispered, "they're insane." "No," Myra said softly, her eyes hard. "They're human." The turning point. Hours dragged on. Both sides bled, but the 7th Fleet still advanced. Their dreadnoughts, each the size of a city, loomed closer to Earth. If they broke through the last line, the planet itself would be in firing range. Then the unexpected happened. The Confederation's forward ships began to falter, not from human fire, but from within. Explosions ripped through their ranks, not attacks, but sabotage. Engines shut down, weapons malfunctioned. Cale's eyes widened. That's Turol Tech." Myra turned sharply. "Your people." Cale nodded, stunned. "The auxiliaries, they're sabotaging their own ships." The message was clear. Not all Confederation worlds were loyal. Some had waited for a chance to strike back, and Earth had given them that chance. Admiral Krautur. On the bridge of the Confederation flagship, Admiral Krautur seethed. Reports flooded in. Sabotage, desertion, unexpected resistance. His massive hands dug into the railing. "This is impossible," he growled. "One planet cannot hold against us." A comms officer hesitated. "Admiral, it's not just one planet." "What?" The officer swallowed. "Multiple fleets have been detected at the edge of the system. Unknown configurations. They're not Confederation." Krautur's crest flared. "Identify them." But he already knew. The Allies revealed themselves. At the system's edge, the void shimmered with light. One by one, ships emerged, crystalline vessels of the Cathari, jagged warcraft of the Draenor, sleek bioships of the Valen, and more. Dozens of species long thought powerless, now united. Cale stared at the display, his voice hushed with awe. The Free Worlds Alliance. The hidden coalition had arrived. Myra exhaled slowly, a flicker of hope stirring in her chest. "Looks like we're not alone after all." The Cathari flagship broadcast across all channels. "To the 7th Fleet, this system is under the protection of the Free Worlds Alliance. Withdraw or face annihilation." For the first time, silence hung heavy over the battlefield. The human moment. Mara seized the moment. She ordered an open transmission, her voice carried across the void to every ship, human, alien, friend, or foe. "This is Captain Mara Ellison of Earth. For centuries, the Confederation has ruled with fear. They told us resistance was impossible, that we were too small, too weak, too primitive, but look around you now. One world stood and others followed. The Confederation is not invincible, their grip is broken, and today we fight not as subjects, but as equals." The words cut deeper than weapons. On Confederation ships, conscripted crews hesitated. On Allied vessels, warriors roared in defiance. Across Earth, billions watching the broadcast lifted their voices in a single cry. For the first time in its history, humanity stood united, and they were not standing alone. Cliffhanger. Admiral Krautur's mandibles clicked furiously as the tide turned. His officers trembled, their confidence shaken. But the Admiral was not a man to retreat. "Enough," he growled. "If they want annihilation, then I'll give it to them." He turned to his weapons chief. "Prepare the Dreadnought's main cannons. Target Earth itself. If they will not kneel, then they will burn." The chamber went silent. Even his officers looked horrified. To scorch an entire planet, billions of civilians, it was an atrocity, but none dared defy him. In Earth Command, Mara's console lit with warnings, massive energy spikes, dreadnought cannons charging. Kale's face drained of color. He's not targeting your fleet, he's targeting the planet. Mara's eyes widened in horror. For all their preparation, for all their allies, nothing could stop a full dreadnought barrage. Unless... Her voice was steady when she spoke. Then we take out the dreadnoughts, now. The command chamber throbbed with alarms. Red lights bathed the walls. Technicians shouted over each other, trying to track the energy spikes boiling off the 7th Fleet's dreadnoughts. Admiral Kratur is targeting Earth itself, Kale said, his voice raw with disbelief. If those cannons fire, nothing will survive. Mara's jaw tightened. Billions of lives, everything they had built. It would all vanish in fire if they hesitated. Then we don't hesitate, she said, her voice low but sharp as a blade. We take out the dreadnoughts before they fire. Gasps rippled through the chamber. Destroy a Confederation dreadnought? It was madness. But Mara didn't care. She had seen impossible orders before. The only difference was this time she was the one giving them. The plan. She paced in front of the display, pointing at the dreadnought formation. They're slow, they're massive, and their shields are built to absorb frontal fire. That's why we don't hit them head-on. We bleed them from the inside. Kale frowned. From the inside. Mara nodded grimly. Boarding runs, strike teams. We cut their guts open before they finish charging. The counselors and generals blanched. Boarding a dreadnought was suicide, but Kale's eyes sharpened. They won't expect it, he said slowly. The Confederation doesn't fight that way. They rely on overwhelming firepower, not close combat. Exactly, Mara said. That's why it'll work. Into the fire. Within minutes, teams were assembled, a mix of Earth soldiers, Martian militia, and even defecting Tural warriors. Old freighters were retrofitted with heavy plating and magnetic clamps. They weren't warships, they were battering rams. Mara strapped into one herself, pulling on a scarred combat vest from her soldier days. The weight of the rifle in her hands felt both familiar and terrible. She had promised herself she'd never fight like this again. But promises didn't mean much when your world was about to burn. Kale joined her armed with a slender Tural blade and a plasma sidearm. He had no illusions. If he was caught fighting alongside humans, there would be no going back. But his eyes were steady. I told you I'd help stop them, he said. I keep my word. Mara gave him a tight smile. Then let's make it count. The first boarding run. The freighters roared toward the dreadnoughts, weaving through a storm of fire. Smaller Confederation ships tried to intercept, but Alliance gunships broke their lines, giving the boarding craft a narrow corridor. Impact in 10 seconds, the pilot shouted. Mara braced herself. The freighter slammed against the dreadnought's hull with bone-rattling force. Magnetic clamps locked, drills roared, and a breach was forced into the hull. Go, go, go! Human soldiers poured into the corridor, weapons blazing. Confederation troopers, towering insectoid Krell and armored Velox, surged to meet them. The air filled with screams, plasma fire, and the smell of scorched metal. Mara charged at the front, firing bursts that tore through Krell chitin. She ducked under a Velox strike, drove her rifle butt into its jaw, and shot it point-blank. Kale fought beside her with startling grace, his blade flickering in the dark, slicing through enemies with precision. For the first time, the two fought not as alien and human, but as soldiers bound by survival. The heart of the beast. They pushed deeper into the dreadnought. Maps stolen from Kale's databanks guided them through winding corridors toward the reactor core. Every step was a battle, stairwells choked with enemies, blast doors that had to be hacked open, traps meant to funnel intruders into kill zones. Half the strike team was gone by the time they reached the reactor chamber. The sight froze Mara in her tracks. The core pulsed like a star trapped in metal ribs, arcs of energy crackling outward. Technicians scrambled around consoles, desperately maintaining the charge. If we destabilize it, Kale shouted over the hum, the whole ship will go critical. That's the idea, Mara growled. She tossed Kale a satchel of explosives. Together they planted charges along the support pylons. Time ticked away, each second echoing in her skull. Then the alarms blared. Reinforcements poured in, dozens of Confederation troopers. Hold them off, Mara roared. Give the charges time. The chamber became hell. Plasma bolts seared the walls. Kale cut down 2 troopers before a third slammed him to the ground. Mara dragged him back up, firing until her rifle overheated. Blood stung her eyes, her arms ached, but she refused to fall. Finally, Kale shouted, "Charges set." "Fall back." They ran, plasma fire chasing them through the corridors. As they dove back into the freighter, Mara slammed her hand against the detonator. A blinding flash erupted behind them. The dreadnought convulsed, its hull splitting apart, explosions racing down its length. Cheers erupted over the comms. "One down," Mara gasped. 2 to go. The Admiral's wrath. On the Confederation flagship, Admiral Krauteur's mandibles clattered in rage as he watched the destruction. A dreadnought gone. Impossible. "These vermin," he snarled. "These primitives dare board our ships." His eyes burned with fury. "Double the guard on the cores, kill every intruder. I want their bodies broadcast across the galaxy." But beneath his rage, a sliver of doubt gnawed at him. Never in his long career had he seen a world resist like this. Never had he seen soldiers throw themselves into suicidal battles with such reckless determination. And never had he seen his fleet bleed so quickly. The cost of Defiance. Mara's boarding teams launched again and again. Each assault bled them dry. Entire freighters didn't return. Soldiers sacrificed themselves to buy precious seconds. But with every loss, another crack appeared in the Confederation. The second dreadnought went down when a Martian pilot rammed his freighter directly into the reactor, laughing as the flames consumed him. The third dreadnought raged on, its core protected by layer upon layer of defenses. Mara herself led the charge, cutting through wave after wave of enemies. Her lungs burned, her vision blurred, but she pressed on. They reached the final chamber, but the defenses were overwhelming. Kale fell beside her, wounded by a plasma bolt to the shoulder. "We can't hold," he gasped. Mara's hand hovered over the last charge. She knew what had to be done. "I'll stay," she said quietly. "You get out." Kale's eyes widened. "No." But she silenced him with a look. "Tell Earth we weren't afraid." She primed the charge. Then, just as the enemy closed in, a shockwave rippled through the chamber. Confederation soldiers screamed as crystalline shards tore through them. The Cathari had arrived. Their ships punched holes into the dreadnought, deploying warriors of living crystal who fought with blinding fury. The chamber erupted into chaos, giving Mara the opening she needed. She slammed the detonator. The third dreadnought split apart in fire and ruin. Cliffhanger. The battlefield fell silent for a moment as wreckage drifted through the void. 3 dreadnoughts, the pride of the Confederation, gone. Mara, bloodied and shaking, collapsed into her seat on the freighter. Kale leaned against her, his wound still bleeding but his eyes fierce. "You did it," he whispered. "No," Mara said weakly, "we did it." But the victory was far from secure. Because on the flagship, Admiral Krauteur's mandibles clicked slowly, deliberately. His eyes glowed with cold hatred. "Signal the Council," he said. "Tell them the humans must not be tolerated. Prepare the doomsday weapon." The bridge crew froze. "Admiral, the weapon is forbidden." "Not anymore," Krauteur hissed. "If Earth wants defiance, we'll give them extinction." The battlefield hung in eerie silence. Wreckage drifted through the void, the shattered hulks of 3 dreadnoughts casting jagged shadows across the stars. Earth's battered fleets limped in ragged formation, exhausted but unbroken. In Earth Command, cheers had erupted when the final dreadnought exploded. Soldiers embraced, civilians wept, and billions watching across the planet felt hope burn in their chests for the first time. But Mara Ellison felt none of it. She leaned against the edge of the hollow table, her armor scorched, her body trembling with exhaustion. Kale stood beside her, his shoulder wound bound but still seeping faintly. They both knew it wasn't over. The Confederation never accepted defeat. On the flagship, Admiral Krauteur loomed over the hollow display of the battlefield. His mandibles clicked slowly, a sound of seething hatred. His dreadnoughts gone, his fleet bleeding, his honor shattered. "This is unacceptable," he growled. "The Council demands results. Earth will burn." One of his officers hesitated. "Admiral, without the dreadnoughts, our advantage is weakened. The Alliance fleet has grown, and their numbers." Silence, Krator snapped. His burning eyes turned to the weapons chief. Activate the prototype. The bridge went deathly quiet. Officers exchanged horrified glances. The Erebin device, one stammered. But Admiral, it's forbidden. Even mentioning it is treason. Krator's voice was cold steel. Do it. Slowly, fearfully, the officer obeyed. Deep within the flagship's armored belly, sealed chambers unlocked. Machines hummed with an ancient, terrible energy. A sphere of black plasma began to form, devouring light itself. The Erebin device, a weapon outlawed even by the Confederation, it didn't just kill, it erased. It consumed matter, unraveling entire ecosystems in seconds. Krator's mandibles curved in a smile. If the galaxy fears humans so much, let them see what fear truly is. The warning. Earth command screens flared with new readings. Technicians froze, their faces draining of color. Unstable energy signature detected, one whispered. It's not like anything in our databanks. Kale's crest flattened in alarm. No, it can't be. Myra turned sharply. What? He swallowed hard. The Erebin device, a weapon of annihilation. It devours matter itself. They haven't used it in millennia, not since the Arkan extinction. Myra's stomach knotted. And what happened to the Arkan? Kale's eyes met hers. They don't exist anymore. Fear across the Alliance. The Alliance fleets broke into panic chatter as the readings spread. The Cathari commander, Aelthir, appeared on Earth's screen, his crystalline form flickering with agitation. If they unleash the device, this system will not survive. Not Earth, not the fleets, not even us. We must retreat. Mara slammed her fist against the table. Retreat and Earth dies anyway. They'll fire as soon as our backs are turned. And after Earth, it'll be you, all of you. Some Alliance leaders hesitated. Others demanded withdrawal. Fear rippled like a disease. Mara's chest burned with frustration. She knew what was happening. The Confederation had always ruled with fear, and now Krator was using it as his final weapon. She had to break it. The speech. Mara stepped forward, forcing her voice into the open channel. Every ship in the system, human and alien alike, heard her words. You're afraid, I get it. I'm afraid too. But listen to me, fear is the Confederation's weapon. It always has been. They want you to believe resistance is pointless, that fighting back means annihilation, that there's no future but their chains. But look around you. We destroyed their dreadnoughts. We survived their fleet. And now they want you to run to prove their lies true. Well, I won't run, and neither will Earth. If this is the day we die, then we'll die standing, because if we kneel, we've already lost. You wanted proof that the Confederation could bleed. You wanted proof that they're not invincible. You've got it. 3 dreadnoughts burning in orbit say so. So make your choice, retreat or fight with us. But know this, I'd rather burn with freedom than live in chains, and I think you would too. The chamber fell silent. Then one by one, voices answered. The Cathari, the Draenor, the Valen, dozens more. The Alliance stands. The fleets shifted back into formation, rallying around Earth. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy defied the Confederation together. Into the fire again. Mara exhaled shakily. They had bought unity, but unity wasn't enough. How do we stop the device? She asked. Kale's eyes narrowed at the readings. It must be powered by the flagship's main reactor. Sever the conduits and it destabilizes, but to get that close. We'll need another boarding run, Mara finished grimly. Her soldiers looked at her in shock. They had barely survived the dreadnought missions. Many hadn't, but she saw no hesitation in their eyes now. They knew what was at stake. Boarding the flagship. The Alliance threw everything they had at the flagship. Fighters screamed through space, pounding its shields. Cathari warships carved holes in its flanks with crystalline beams. Human gunships rammed into its escorts, clearing a brutal path. Through the chaos, Myra's assault craft pierced the flagship's outer hull. The clamps locked. The breach opened. And Mara charged into the beast. The corridors were different here, grander, darker, filled with Confederation banners. Elite guards waited, their armor gleaming, their weapons heavier than anything they'd faced before. The fighting was savage. Blades clashed with plasma. Blood spattered against steel. Myra fought like a storm, her rifle roaring, her fists breaking bones when ammo ran dry. Beside her, Kale's blade danced, his movements fueled by rage as much as loyalty. They cut their way toward the reactor chamber. The core. At last they reached it, a massive cathedral of machinery. In the center, suspended in a cage of energy conduits, pulsed the Erebin device. A black sphere of nothingness, its surface devouring light, growing with every heartbeat. Mara's skin prickled just looking at it. Her instincts screamed that this was death incarnate. Kale's voice trembled. If it reaches full charge, Earth is gone. Confederation guards flooded in from every side. Mara raised her rifle. Then we don't let it finish. Cliffhanger. The battle exploded. Plasma fire lit the chamber. Soldiers screamed as the device pulsed brighter, hungrier. Kale was knocked to the ground, barely deflecting a blade aimed at his throat. Mara emptied her rifle, then drew her knife, slamming it into an enemy's chest. The device roared, its energy spiking. Warning klaxons blared in a dozen alien tongues. On the flagship bridge, Admiral Krautur watched the readings climb. His mandibles curved in grim satisfaction. Let them fight, they can die with their planet. In the reactor chamber, Mara looked at Kale through the storm of chaos. We can't hold this, he shouted. Her eyes burned with determination. Then we blow it now, even if it takes us with it. Her hand reached for the detonator. And the device pulsed again, swelling, threatening to consume the chamber. The reactor chamber shook as if the ship itself were screaming. The Erebin device pulsed like a black sun, tendrils of energy clawing outward. Consoles sparked, steel warped, and the screams of dying soldiers echoed through the chaos. Mara Ellison clutched the detonator in one bloodied hand. She could feel the hum of the device in her bones, pulling at her skin, threatening to tear her apart molecule by molecule. Kale staggered to her side, blood running down his temple. If you set it off now, he shouted, it'll take you, maybe all of us, with it. Mara's gray eyes locked on his. Then better us than Earth. She thumbed the arming switch. The last gambit. Confederation guards surged forward, desperate to stop her. Kale threw himself into their path, his Turol blade singing as it cut through armor. Mara's strike team held the line with their last strength, Martian rifles cracking, Alliance soldiers roaring in defiance. But more kept coming. Mara, Kale shouted, we can't hold. And then suddenly the chaos shifted. The chamber walls erupted inward as Cathari warriors stormed through, crystalline bodies glowing with inner fire. Behind them came Draenor brutes, hulking forms smashing aside Confederation soldiers. The Alliance had breached the flagship. For the first time, the Confederation elite faltered. Face to face. A thunderous voice cut through the din. Enough. Admiral Krautur himself strode into the chamber, towering above all others, his armor black and gleaming, his mandibles wide in fury. He ignored the battle around him, his burning eyes fixed on Mara. You, he snarled, the human who dared humiliate the Confederation, the one who infected others with defiance. He drew a massive plasma halberd, its edge glowing white-hot. Your death will end this. Mara stepped forward, chest heaving, detonator still clutched in one hand. Funny, she rasped. I was thinking the same about you. Duel in the dark. The battle around them faded as the two locked eyes. Soldiers on both sides gave way, sensing the moment. Krautur lunged, his halberd swinging in a deadly arc. Mara dove aside, rolling to her feet, her rifle snapping up. She fired, the shots sparked harmlessly against his armor. He swung again, and the blade missed her head by inches, slicing a molten groove into the steel floor. Mara ducked and weaved, every instinct screaming at her. She wasn't stronger, she wasn't faster, but she was human and humans adapted. She feinted left, then rolled right, jamming the butt of her rifle into a seam in his armor. He roared, staggering for just a moment. Kale shouted from the line, his voice hoarse. The conduits, aim for the conduits. Mara's eyes flicked to the reactor chamber walls, where thick energy conduits fed into the Erebin device. If she couldn't kill Krautur outright, maybe she could kill his weapon. She sprinted toward the nearest conduit. Krautur roared and gave chase. Breaking the chains. Mara ducked under another swing, sparks showering her. She leapt onto a console, scrambled up the side, and jammed her last grenade into the conduit's housing. Krator realized too late. The explosion ripped through the chamber, severing the line. The Erebin device pulsed violently, its glow stuttering. One downed. Mara turned to Kale. Get the others. Kale rallied Alliance soldiers, fighting their way to the other conduits. One by one, they planted charges, severing the lines. Each explosion made the device flicker, its black surface collapsing inward, its hungry roar faltering. But Krator was relentless. He barreled through the smoke, halberd swinging wildly, catching Mara across the ribs. She screamed, pain lancing through her, but she stayed on her feet. "You are nothing," Krator hissed. "A primitive ape daring to defy the will of 3,000 worlds." Mara spat blood and met his eyes. "Maybe, but today you bleed like anyone else." The final blow. With a guttural roar, Krator charged. Mara waited, her knife hidden in her free hand. At the last instant, she sidestepped, driving the blade deep into the joint of his armor. The Admiral bellowed, staggering. Mara wrenched the halberd from his grasp and swung it with all her strength. The glowing blade cut through his chest, splitting armor and flesh alike. Krator collapsed to his knees, mandibles clattering weakly. His eyes flickered with disbelief. "One human," he gasped before the light left him. Mara stood over his body, panting, her vision swimming. Behind her, the final conduit exploded. The Erebin device howled, then imploded, collapsing into a singularity before vanishing with a shockwave that rattled the ship. The chamber went silent. Collapse of the flagship. With the device gone and their admiral dead, the flagship began to fail. Explosions rocked the corridors, lights flickered, and the ship listed heavily in space. "Evacuate," Mara shouted. "Get everyone out." Alliance forces dragged the wounded back to their ships. Kale slung Mara's arm over his shoulder, half carrying her toward the breach. She tried to protest, but her legs refused to obey. "You saved them," Kale said fiercely as they ran. "All of them." Mara grimaced. "Not yet, let's live first." They hurled themselves into their assault craft just as the flagship erupted behind them, a colossal explosion tearing it apart. The shockwave hurled their craft spinning, alarms blaring, but the pilot righted them. Through the viewport, Mara watched the Confederation flagship break into burning fragments. And with it, the fear that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. The aftermath. When the news spread, the galaxy shook. The Seventh Fleet destroyed, their dreadnoughts shattered, their flagship annihilated, Admiral Krator dead, and Earth still standing. For worlds long cowed under the Confederation's shadow, it was the proof they had been waiting for. Whispers of rebellion spread like wildfire. The free world's alliance swelled overnight, species once silent now declaring independence. On Earth, billions cheered. Crowds filled the streets. The name Mara Ellison was shouted in every language, etched into history as the woman who defied the Confederation and lived. But Mara herself sat quietly in the Geneva command chamber, her ribs bound, her face pale. Kale stood beside her, his arm in a sling, but his eyes alive with something she hadn't seen before. Hope. A new dawn. The surviving Alliance leaders gathered in Geneva. Hollow images of dozens of species filled the chamber, voices overlapping with questions, proposals, and warnings. But one thing was clear, the Confederation's grip was broken. Not shattered completely, the beast still lived, its armies still vast. But the illusion of invincibility, the fear that had bound the galaxy for millennia, was gone. And all because one human had refused to kneel. Mara leaned forward, her voice steady. "Earth won't lead this alone, but we'll stand with you. Together we can build something better, something free." Aelthir of the Cathari inclined his crystalline head. "Then let this be the beginning, the alliance of free worlds forged in the fire of defiance." Applause thundered across the chamber. Epilogue, the human legacy. Weeks later, as fleets rebuilt and new alliances formed, Mara stood once more on her balcony in Geneva. The night sky glittered with stars, no longer symbols of fear, but of possibility. Kale joined her, leaning against the rail, his crest relaxed. "You've changed everything," he said quietly. Mara shook her head. "Not me, all of us, humans, Tural, Cathari, every species that said no." Kale studied her for a long moment. "And what about you? What happens now?" Mara gazed at the stars. Now we prepare. The Confederation isn't gone. They'll come again. Harder, angrier, but next time they won't just face Earth. Her eyes burned with quiet fire. They'll face everyone who remembers that the Confederation can bleed. Kale smiled faintly. You sound like a legend already. Mara chuckled, then winced at the pain in her ribs. Legends are just people who didn't get the chance to stop. They stood in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere out there, the Confederation licked its wounds. But for the first time in living memory, the galaxy wasn't theirs alone. Because one human had shattered their grip.